Okay, now we're going to look at the basic beliefs of Islam. Now, again, just like I said yesterday, when we look at religion, we need to look at religion as the construct of people, not the other way around. When we understand it as the construct of people, then we can see it as a way to understand those people, understand the culture. If we look at religion as a construct of God, then we get into religious disagreements that really no one's going to win. Again, respect all religions. All of us have different faiths. Some of us don't believe in God. And so respect everyone, please, and thank you. Now, the first pillar of Islam, there are 5 pillars of Islam. The first pillar is very simple. It is to recognize there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his last prophet. It is very similar to the 10 Commandments, where I believe the first commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me. And in fact, Islam is an outgrowth of both Christianity and Judaism. Muslims see themselves as worshiping the same God as the Jews and the same God as the Christians. Now, looking at that too, it's very fascinating to look at the name of God. Allah, I believe, has the same root as the Jewish God El Shaddai. El and Al are the same roots or the same sound as they start off. In fact, there are many Mesopotamian gods that predate Christianity, Judaism, that have that AL sound in their name. Now, the Jewish God did change his name under Moses. When Moses saw the burning bush, he asked the name of God, and the God or the bush answered Yahweh, which means I am who I am. Some people translate that Jehovah. But in Islam, Allah is also known as the God with 99 names. And I left a few names up there on the board or on the note paper here for you to look at. Now, the second one is daily prayer. This is one thing I think is really cool. 5 times a day, Muslims are required to pray. They face Mecca. In fact, if I was going to face Mecca, I'd look right out that window. That's due north or close to it. So when they face Mecca, they face north because the shortest distance between here and Mecca is over the North Pole. And praying 5 times a day is really a way to establish a culture or a group or community. It brings people together. If you're praying 5 times a day, you are looking for people to pray with. And so it gives you that brotherhood, something that you're living with other people and living through the same events with. Now, a third one is the zakat, where you give charity to those who are less fortunate than us. In Christianity and Judaism, it's called tithe, and that's where the Christians and Jews will give 10% of their income or their increase to charity. Muslims give 1% of their net worth. And so when I first looked at that, I was wondering how close that is to each other. And it's depending on how you calculate it, it can be almost the same dollar for dollar amount. But it's very fascinating because this all goes all the way back to Muhammad, where he saw that all of us are one people and we should take care of each other. Now, the fourth one is the Hajj. Now, the Hajj is a pilgrimage to Mecca. And as you get to Mecca, you're required to do several things. One of the things you do is you march around the Kaaba 7 times saying a ritual prayer. You also go out, before you even get to Mecca, you change your clothes and you all wear the same outfit. The men will wear a garment that doesn't have any seams to it. Women are allowed to wear garments that have seams, but it is an all-white garment, and so it erases class distinction. If you ever see a picture of people worshiping around the Kaaba, you'll see this sea of white, the white clothes they're all wearing around this black square box in the middle. And it is the largest mosque in the world. I believe it holds about 2 million people. Once they've done that, they also will go off and they'll have a ritual stoning of the devil. There's a few other things that we'll do before they return home. There's 3 really good stories I remember hearing about over the years. One is Mansa Musa, where he traveled to Mecca. And as he traveled to Mecca, he was the king out in Mali. And in the 1400s, the Europeans showed Mali on the map as this African sitting on a pile of gold, because Mali was very wealthy. In fact, Mansa Musa, he traveled to Mecca, and the story I heard is he traveled and he had 500 servants that each had a camel loaded with gold, and each servant had a golden staff that they crossed the Sahara Desert with. And as they came into the Nile River, the price of gold dropped because he was giving gold away to everyone. I believe Mansa Musa would have been the wealthiest man in the world. He might be the wealthiest man in history. It'd be interesting to look that up. The second one I like is kind of not appropriate because it was Sir Richard Francis Burton in the mid 1800s. He was a British spy, and he learned and was fluent in, I believe, 22 or 23 languages. And one of them was a Persian dialect, and he disguised himself as a Persian. And he traveled to Mecca, being the first European, the first, as we know, non-Muslim to go to Mecca and to participate in the Hajj. The reason I say it's not quite appropriate is it might be a little bit disrespectful to sneak into an event like that. The third one is the one of Malcolm X. Malcolm X converted to what was known as the Nation of Islam, and when he was in prison in the 1950s, and then he crossed the main person in the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam is not an Islamic religion, as I understand it. It's an American version of Islam. It's still around. It is a reaction to white supremacist society. But when Malcolm X crossed with Elijah Muhammad, the main person in the Nation of Islam, he was actually expelled from that church, and he eventually began to convert to Islam, and he went on the Hajj right before he was assassinated in the 1960s. But those are some three pretty good Hajj stories that I like to look at. Now, the last pillar of Islam is fasting, the month of Ramadan. Some of you may know, some of our Muslim kids at school, they will fast from sun up to sundown. They won't eat after the sun rises, and they won't eat or drink all day long until the sun sets. There are exceptions. If you're not healthy, if you're too young, if you're pregnant, if you're sick, those are reasons why you wouldn't participate in Ramadan. In the Middle East, I hear during the month of Ramadan, it'd be fascinating to go travel there and see how people do it, because everything's shut down during the day. And at night, they do open up the cafes and restaurants, and people will come out at night and socialize. But Ramadan would be just a fascinating time to go visit the Middle East, to see how people interact with each other and how the day is not very active. Maybe like right now, where we're all homebound and not out there and about. But it would be a fascinating thing to go see. Now, when Ramadan ends, they do celebrate a day called Eid, and that's where gifts are exchanged. A lot of our Muslim kids would get significant amounts of money from some of their relatives, and it's kind of fun to see what they come up with and how much they all earn from their families. I did put on here the months of the Islamic calendar. Islam is on a lunar calendar, and so their months will rotate throughout the year, and that leads to some confusion. I do know that there are some holy days that they'll say are part of the last 10 days of this month, because some of those days we won't actually have track of because of the lunar calendar, and converting it to the solar calendar that we have. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or Mrs. Phelps. I'm sure we'd be glad to answer whatever you have. Good talking to you guys again. I hope everyone's being safe. I'll talk to you guys later.